Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. You see, Momo is co-pilot today. Actually, let me switch my screen so it looks a little better. There we go. I'm experimenting with new configurations. Anyway, I'll talk to this about the patrons. The patrons will get some say over whether I reconfigure my office. So if you want to be part of this exciting initiative, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. But more seriously, become a patron for boss fight previews. And the patrons got, last week, they got the opportunity to offer some pretty major feedback regarding boss fights. So that's the cool part of being a patron. You do get an extra video per week, but really it's the feedback process and the heads up and a chance to really be involved in crafting content in a meaningful way. So that's what it's for, shilling over. I want to talk the Uncharted movie because when they first announced they were going to do an Uncharted movie, I'm like, why do we need an Uncharted movie? We've got two really good Indiana Jones movie, one decent Indiana Jones movie, and then that Crystal Skull thing that we just don't talk about. But the more I hear about it, the more I think, you know what? This actually could be good and could be the movie that Crystal Skull tried to be and wasn't. Now, the casting of Tom Holland, I thought was awesome. I thought it was spot on. I didn't know he's only 23, and it's weird that the number of people who are like, he's too young. It's like that never stopped people where actresses are concerned. You know, oh, Lois Lane's a Pulitzer Prize winner at 25. Yeah, that happens. But I'm probably actually overestimating the age of the actresses they cast as Lois Lane. But I thought it was interesting that there was such a different reaction to casting a 23-year-old guy who has more than shown he can carry a movie, right? But it's going to be a prequel. It seems as though those flashbacks with Sully and Nate in Uncharted 4 are going to be more developed. So it's sort of like the period, they're calling it a prequel, but it's actually probably more of an interquel where it's an older Nathan Drake than the kid in Uncharted 4, but not as old as the Nathan Drake that we see in Uncharted 1, who was obviously, you know, an experienced adventurer at that point. I think it's a cool idea because it means they can tell a story that hasn't been told in the games, but it's created a recurrence of those articles about that point out that when there's video game to movie adaptations, they tend not to be very good, and why. And I want to talk about that because there's if you want to give it a read, there's a good article on why is this not there we go on Comic Book Resources that this is going to be a nuanced thing. I believe this article is correct. This article is correct about Tom Holland being correct. I don't think it tells the whole story. So I am not disagreeing with the article. I am going to add to it, which is what I think most video game to movie adaptations get wrong. There are structural issues that, for some odd reason, people don't grasp. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because that people treat film as like this pinnacle of visual medium and they're wrong. Video games are objectively a higher form of art than film. Why? Interactivity, fight me. But so they talk about it being a prequel, all this stuff. Let's get to the actual comments. Holland praised writer Joe Carnahan's Uncharted script and revealed the movie will be a prequel that tells a story the games have never covered. While he doesn't mention any specifics, Holland notes that this is an advantage that Uncharted has over past video game adaptations. He makes a good point. Instead of focusing on trying to replicate gameplay and iconic video game features, a focus on story and world building seems to be a better approach to the genre. Now, this is the critical thing, and then they have a picture of the awful Super Mario movie. And mentions that Assassin's Creed strayed too far from its source material. That is putting it lightly. Holy crap. I don't know what happened with that movie. My guess, I read a lot of the advanced stuff for the Assassin's Creed movie because I was hoping it'd be good. But what seemed to happen with the Assassin's Creed movie is they got obsessed with making it a movie. It's got to be a movie, therefore we have to explain things to the audience. Yet the audience somehow managed to figure out, cosmic cubes and infinity stones and all that stuff, but couldn't handle the time loops in the Emilia Clarke Terminator movie. I don't know. But all of a sudden my nose is running. I don't know why. Ugh, squirrel. But the sentence I want to focus on here is, instead of focusing on trying to replicate gameplay and iconic video game features, a focus on story and world building seems to be a better approach to the genre. Here's where I'm saying this is right, but doesn't go far enough. Instead of focusing on trying to replicate gameplay and iconic video game features, a focus on story and world building seems to be a better approach to the genre. Should read, instead of focusing on trying to replicate gameplay and iconic video game features, a movie should make a movie, because replicating gameplay and video game features is impossible outside of a video game. And this is the mistake that movie directors make all the time. They're like, oh, we're going to do first person view in the Doom movie as an homage, and that's going to totally, make people forget that stuff in the Doom movie wasn't actually the premise of Doom. I enjoyed the Doom movie, even though I recognize it wasn't objectively very good. But it's demons in space. That ain't that deep. But for some odd reason, it had to be, no, aliens. And it kind of lost something, because to me, some of the moral license in Doom is the fact that you are fighting actual demons. You're not going in and slaughtering some alien race that was minding its own business until the humans showed up, or the Doomslayer showed up. It's actually demons. They're inherently bad. Therefore, it's okay to kill them, and not in that propagandistic, all of a sudden other humans become the enemy wartime kind of way. But demons are actually, by their sort of nature, evil, with notable exceptions. But movies, and I say this from talking to people in Hollywood. People in Hollywood both have this sort of artificial low opinion of video games as an art form, but also they're terrified of it because they see the sales figures in video games and go, holy crap. They kind of get envious. I mean, let's face it. Money isn't the grease in the machine in Hollywood. Money is the machine. The movies are the grease. At the core of it all, it's all about making money. And the ongoing continued growth of the video game industry is something a lot of industries are quite envious of. They don't understand why. And the thing that's so exciting about video games, and the reason video games get so demonized, is it's a new way to tell a story. And that's very exciting, because you saw some, intellectuals insisting that every story, the basics of every story that could be told is now told, because of there's only so many variables. But that was like, well, that might be true for linear stories, like movies and TV shows, but not so, and books and all that stuff, but not so with video games. Now, the really cool thing, the thing that makes video games unique as a medium, is also why they are legitimately different well, difficult. I'm really tired. I apologize. Why they are legitimately difficult to adapt. Because there's the movie version of the book, right? J.K. Rowling wrote the Harry Potter books, then made movies that made boatloads of money and spawned theme parks and all that stuff. That is not the same process as the book based on the movie phenomenon, which I have loved since I was a kid. Every movie I really loved, I bought the books of. And Terry Brooks's novelization of Star Wars Episode 1 was, I think, better structured than the movie was. In terms of books based on the movies or the book version of the movie, I highly recommend the novelization of Episode 1. It starts with the pod race. Enough said. But there's that thing, right? Why didn't Episode 1 start with the pod race? Well, because there's that Star Wars cinematic convention of doing the crawl and then starting and then panning down, right? You probably could do that with the pod race, but you know what I mean. When you go from a book to a movie, you are adding visuals. When you go from a movie to a book, you are removing visuals. That's important because the same relationship applies to films and video games in reverse. When you take a video game and make it a film, you are removing interactivity. When you take a movie and turn it into a video game, you add interactivity, which is why the Batman games are freaking awesome. Because you get to be Batman instead of just watching Batman. But that matters because one of the things about book to movie adaptations is you get to see the stuff you imagined in your brain on the screen. And that's very exciting and validating for people because you can see it, right? With video games, you've already seen it and you get to interact with it. And that's what makes video games to movie adaptations so difficult. There is no substitute for the thrill of interactivity. So when you go from video games to film, much like if you go from films to books, in order for it not to just feel like some sort of continuation or you know, something, for it to seem like something worth making, like the book version of Star Wars Episode 1, it actually has to be better in terms of story. Not just as good, but better in terms of story structure, for it to seem like anything more than, you know, I've just found a way to relive a movie I really liked because in my case as a kid, we couldn't afford a VCR to get it at home. So I could, you know, revisit the story again and again and again and again in a book. People aren't going to do that with video games to movies. Why? Because they've still got the video game, right? Case in point, people watch the Netflix series, which was an adaptation of the books, not the video games, but let's face it, there was a lot from the video games that ended up in there, and I maintain there should have been more from the video games that ended up in there, because, yeah, those are the best parts, in my opinion. But you know, everybody went back and played Witcher 3 again. The user stats for Witcher 3 like just zoomed upward after the Marvel Netflix series came out. The books not so much. Why? Interactivity. Why would you just watch a world? Why would you just read about a world when you can interact with that world? Right? And some people would argue, and I sort of agree, that there is an interactive component to books because you have to use your imagination. Well, that goes away if you already have, you know, an image in your mind of what the characters look and sound like because you've come from a TV show or a movie, right? The other major thing with video games to movie adaptations, first of all, you're like a video game can create exactly the character they want. They can cast a voice actor and hire a motion capture actor and then tweak that motion capture actor's appearance. I mean, the closest you get in film is something like Darth Vader or Groot, where they dubbed over the voice to get it to sound awesome. But video games, the sky's the limit, which is what makes it such a cool creative challenge, because you do have to choose every single little detail. A character doesn't have a mole just because an actor has a mole. You actually have to, if you want to create a more interesting, distinct, more human look as opposed to something idealized, all these things are stuff you have to put into the game, as opposed to, one of the cool things about the original Star Wars is that Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford are all just neat looking people. They're not that classically straight up chiseled, perfected appearance. Harrison Ford's got that kind of crooked smile, and Mark Hamill's got that kind of very interesting, distinct look, and so does Carrie Fisher. Carrie Fisher had one of the most distinct appearances of any actress ever. And that's the mistake I think they've made with Star Wars movies going forward. Instead of going out and finding somebody else who's super neat looking in a totally different way, they just keep casting actresses who look kind of like Carrie Fisher, only more, conventional beauty standard, right? Conventional Hollywood beauty standard. That's a digression. With book to movie adaptations, let's jump over to Lord of the Rings for now. You get to see the Battle of Helm's Deep, right? You get to see the battle of the four, I don't know, the one with all the horsemen. I'm blanking. I'm super tired. But you know what I mean? You get to see those iconic battles. You get to revel in the visual amazingness, mastery of them. With a video game, you've already done that, right? And that's the cool thing about how they're approaching the Uncharted movie. The first two, I would even claim three Uncharted games had these great mythical moments. There was the point where it went from kind of real life geography and history to the fantastic in a way that was super cool. Those like Yeti things in Uncharted 2, the kind of zombie crazy monsters in Uncharted 3, and so on. When you've already had that experience in a video game and you're just straight up adapting a video game, that's harder to wow an audience with, things like the cool character designs for the orcs, seeing how they interpreted the Ents, seeing how they went with the elves and all that stuff, the armor designs, everything like that. You're losing that wow factor. Even going from like comic books to movies, you're still going from like, hand-drawn art to having to make that shit three-dimensional. And there's a lot you can do in that adaptation process. That's fun. People like it. It seems wowza. With video games, no, it's already all done. Graphics have gotten so good, especially in something like the Uncharted games, that's not there anymore. But because they're doing a prequel, they can do a culture and mythology, maybe something Latin American. I believe they were in like Paraguay or Peru or something like that in Uncharted 4. They have done some Latin American stuff in Uncharted in the past, but they didn't go like super, super deep into it. That would be kind of cool. Cause Mexican and Latin American, mythology is really freaking cool. And doesn't get used the people tend to go either Greek or Egyptian, sometimes Asian. I don't know why they don't do Latin, or even some of the indigenous Southwestern myths. Some of those are really freaking cool. And so there can be those, oh my God, wow, creative moments without copying the games. And they're going to have to do that because basically people who aren't familiar with the games, if it doesn't have a really distinct reason for being, then it's just Indiana Jones all over again. Like most film buffs, the challenge for the movie is going to be not being too much like Indiana Jones. Now, one is you set it in modern day, fine, solved to an extent. But you're also going to have to make the relationships different, and going younger takes away some of that. Casting Mark Wahlberg as Sully is an interesting choice. I would have been like, really? The guy from Transformers? But it's funny because when I was thinking of who would I put as Sully in an Uncharted movie when I was expecting him to be older, the person I kept coming down to was actually Donnie Wahlberg from Blue Bloods. You know, the New Kids on the Block guy. He's really good, but he's got that kind of, you know, you practically see the cigar tapping, Groucho Marx style kind of delivery going on the whole time. And so, you know, maybe Mark Wahlberg can translate some of that Bostonian charm into that. And so I have hope there, especially if he's going to be kind of younger and less world weary, and yet still dated. I wonder if they are going to make it somewhat of a period piece, set it in like, I don't know, the 80s or the 90s or something like that, as opposed to today. We'll see. But, you know, there's potential there, first of all, because the Uncharted movies are very cinematic. It's not, and it doesn't have a distinct visual style like, you know, Angry Birds or Minecraft. Though the Angry Birds movie, I mean, they got a sequel, so that did well enough. People forget about that one. But there's an example of the game is so simple that it's all plot. You're not replicating a plot. But, final thing. The thing that movies struggle to realize, and so they end up with really weak plots, is that the stuff in a movie that we would consider plot, for instance, you know, Indiana Jones puts the sandbag, takes the idol, thinks he has succeeded, but no, he's triggered a trap. He runs away and is chased by a giant rock that is then following him. That's gameplay in a video game, not cutscene plot, not hardwired created plot. And especially in these open world games, just replicating those gameplay moments from a video game are going to feel disappointing to somebody watching, especially if they played the game, because it's like, that was more fun to play than watch. I want to go play because I don't know about you guys. When I watch a video game, it makes me want to go play it. There are certain games, no, like Battlefield, Call of Duty, Fortnite. I actually prefer watching the multiplayer on those games. I find too much going on in multiplayer of those games. I don't enjoy it, especially Battlefield, because that game is so damn pretty, and I want to get in there and inspect everything and look at all the little leaf things. And, you know, Frostbite can make things look really pretty as an engine, and I end up just getting dead. So I prefer to watch, so I don't have that problem. Because then I can focus on horizon lines and cool vehicles and stuff like that and enjoy it that way. But that's rare. And that's the thing that a movie has got to get over. It can't just be, and this is why I'm saying Tom Holland's right and Comic Book Resources is right to think he's right, but it doesn't go far enough. I lost my cursor. Who's the author on this article? Jonathan Figueroa. What's wrong with me today? But the idea that it's focusing on the characters and the story, and you know, focusing on that relationship between Nate and Sully and how it formed, that's going to be an interesting movie, right? I just watched over the weekend, I watched Ford versus Ferrari. And yeah, it's a car movie. I mean, that movie's car porn from start to finish. There's so many gorgeous vintage vehicles. The dashboards alone in some of those scenes are drool worthy. But the thing that really makes it for most people who don't give a shit about classic cars is the relationship and the performances of Matt Damon's character and Christian Bale's character. And this is the first movie I've actually liked Christian Bale in, found him likable, not liked him because he was kind of creepy. And so it was, and John Bernthal playing absolutely not the Punisher. He plays Lee Iacocca in that movie, which is cool. But it's the relationship and how they solve problems and the acting and the way the characters bounce off each other, and Christian Bale's character's wife in the movie is really good in the few scenes she gets too. She's not a typical long-suffering wife in a period piece. But it's that relationship that makes it a fun ride. And the Uncharted movie has the potential to do that. And having two action stars who really have the opportunity to show that they can act, that's what excites me about Uncharted as a movie. I do not tend to get excited about video games because they're going to be made into a movie. I don't need that validation. A video game that sells, a video game franchise that sells 40 million, 50 million, 70 million copies of games. Do we need a Grand Theft Auto movie? No, it sells boatloads of copies. A movie remake of Grand Theft Auto 3 in the modern day could be quite timely, but I don't think that's going to happen. Who needs it? There's plenty of crime, those sort of crime genre movies out there. But Uncharted, there seems to be a 30s serial revival film, 30s serial film revival, happening right now, with not only Uncharted going into development coming out in 2021, but Jungle Cruise this year. And, for years there were movies like The Mummy and stuff like that, all sort of drew from that old serial adventure homage route. And so Uncharted could be a very fun movie in that regard too, especially since they could put in a woman in it, a female Girl Friday type character who is not Elena and not Chloe. Because Elena, it took me a long time to really like Elena, but Chloe is a femme fatale. All right. It's Claudia Black. She makes everything awesome. But there's really an opportunity to create this sort of, and again, the actress could be from whatever culture they're exploring at the time. Because let's face it, she's not going to continue to modern day, though for a series of prequels, she could hang around for quite a while, but there's a real opportunity to improve on the original games by creating a really fun, dynamic, larger than life female character in the mold of a Carrie Fisher type, kind of quirky and her own version of interesting as opposed to just hot or tough or strong, or they've never quite hit that in the Uncharted games. And I'm not quite sure why. I think part of it is the focus was just not on that character. I think it was also casting. I think it was also because there was this weird distracting tendency to make the boobs on female characters sit like rocks on their chest. That has nothing to do with the character development. And if you like Elena, awesome. If you like Chloe, awesome. If it had just been Chloe, I probably would have liked it better. But the fact that Chloe was just a speed bump for that relationship, the good girl, bad girl dichotomy, I was like, I actually like her better as a character. Even though she's of dubious morality. I just never liked Elena. That TV producer type thing didn't work for me. Obnoxious person. By Uncharted 3, they sort of found a way to make it work and sort of redeemed her for me, but I spent 2 games not being able to stand her. So there's a real opportunity there to have, maybe the female character is the seasoned adventurer. In this case, that would be interesting. You get like an Angela Bassett type, or Viola Davis type, or I'm blanking on the Alfie Woodard. She'd be like, she's the seasoned adventurer. And I'm not talking about looks. I'm just talking about the way, the presence on the screen, and have her be the experienced adventurer that Nate, who in Uncharted 4 at that, when we saw him as younger, he was just a street pickpocket, right? And Sully was sort of a low-level scumbag is the best way to describe him. And, working for this seasoned adventurer, they become the guys we know now, sort of rogues with hearts of gold. That would be really interesting. That would be cool. That would be a different take on the role of women in those movies. It could be really, really, really interesting having a woman over 40. Now, it's a movie, so that probably won't happen, but I can dream, and maybe somebody will see it and go, oh, for the sequel, if this does well, we'll do this. But that's that. First of all, it's a new idea in an existing framework, but let's face it, the existing Uncharted framework is basically Indiana Jones, only instead of being an academic, he's basically a shady end of the law, which actually makes more sense, because if you're going there and like stealing artifacts, and it is stealing, it's considered stealing now. It's not, oh, we're going to take it to our university in the US. No, you're not supposed to take antiquities out of their country of origin anymore. So they're leaning into the fact that, it is grave robbing. It's tomb robbing. And so they created characters that it makes sense in that regard. So there's a lot of potential. But it's not just that focusing on story and character is a good idea. You have to focus on story and character in a movie based on video games, because you cannot replicate the interactive visual thrill of a video game in a movie. You are going book adaptation of the movie, not movie adaptation of a book. You are stepping down a rung on the excitement level. It used to be like film, TV, books in terms of excitement, but TV's gotten so damn good in that regard that I can't say that anymore. That the most recent episode of MacGyver, oh my god, it was crazy. They were like ziplining from plane to plane. I thought this was like an Uncharted thing, but it was ziplining from plane to plane, and then they landed a plane on a tanker truck. It was awesome. Like, it was like a movie. But I think the fact that we get so many thrills on a regular basis that you really do need to focus on those characters, because otherwise it's just a wash. We're so desensitized to the visual stimulus that it doesn't thrill us anymore. So hopefully it's good. It's coming out in 2021? What's the release date? Where are you, release date? March 5th, 2021. There we go. So like a spring break movie. That doesn't bode well for what they think the quality of it is. But movies like 300 and Sin City and stuff like that came out and were popular. Just that release date for a movie is often too far away from the Oscars and too early to be a summer film. So they probably don't have very high expectations for it. But we can hope, right? We can hope that's not a good release date. Okay, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you find this interesting. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.